On today's Fast Friday, we're going to take a look at two things. First, Fujifilm's firmware update. And then secondly, we're going to take a closer look at what Fujifilm calls one push autofocus. That's right, and it is great to be back. Roll intro. Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech. I'm already a bit late to this party because Fujifilm has released a whole round of firmware updates on June 29th for the following cameras: the X-T3, X-T4, XS10, X Pro 3, and X-T32. All of these X-Series cameras are getting the usual bug fixes, which Fujifilm doesn't explain what they are, so I can't even tell you what's being fixed. Now, the X-T3, X-T4, and XS10 are getting compatibility updates for the new XF150-600 zoom lens. In the premium compact line for the X100V, there is an update to address a bug fix. And in the GFX line, the GFX 100 and 100S, as well as the GFX 50S and 50R, are all receiving updates. Basically, they're bug fixes as well. But there's one final feature update that's included in this new firmware that's, as Fujifilm describes it, and I'm quoting now, "The accuracy of AF function has been improved at manual focus mode using one push AF." And this feature is coming to the following cameras: the GFX 100 and 100S, the X-T3, X-T4, XS10, and X-T32. I am just going to say this again like I always do. If you only have one camera that you're using professionally to put food on the table, you might want to wait a few weeks, but first, just to see if there's any update issues that crop up. I almost never apply a firmware update released in the first month to any camera that I cannot afford to lose. Now, you can apply the firmware update either using the app or using an SD card and downloading from the website. I'll have links to where you can get this firmware update listed down below in the description of this video. Okay, so moving on to part 2 of this video, what exactly does improvement of autofocus using one push autofocus mean exactly? Well, since I couldn't find any official reference on the Fujifilm firmware update page, nor in the actual Fujifilm manual for the camera, I'm going to go out on a limb here and tell you what I think it means. And I can tell you with about 99% certainty that this refers to back button focus using one of the buttons assigned to the AF on mode, which is used in conjunction with manual focus mode. So let me break this down and it'll be a lot easier to understand. Also, I tested out this new firmware update and I'll tell you what I think. First off, as you know, you can assign various camera functions to the custom buttons on the camera. And you do this by pressing and holding down the DISP back button and then picking what you want to customize. Now, on most Fujifilm cameras, they offer a dedicated autofocus lock button. You don't have to use that specific button that they give you. You can assign it to any button you want to, but it's already been preset for you. On the X-T4, it looks like this. On the X-T3, it's right here. Now, as far as the new firmware update goes, when you put the camera into manual mode, right, you can then immediately press the AF on button, for example, on the X-T4, or the AFL button on the X-T3 to immediately cause the camera to activate autofocus even while you're in manual focus mode. Okay, I've got the camera in manual focus mode right now, but I'm not going to turn the focus ring. Instead, I'm going to press the AF on button on the back. Boom, just like that. Pressing again. So what happens is the camera immediately jumps into autofocus, activates it, autofocuses, and you're good to go, and you're still in manual mode. And it's great because you can quickly use the camera's autofocus system and then fine-tune your focus by manually rotating the focus ring. So getting back to the firmware update, according to Fujifilm, this entire operation of putting the camera into manual focus mode and then using the back button AF on or AFL button, whatever it is on your camera, to cause the camera to jump into autofocus has now been improved. Now, I tested this out on an X-T4 by setting a Fujifilm 23mm lens to the widest aperture and then seeing how the camera performed before the firmware update. I then repeated the test after I applied the firmware update. I did this for both the X-T4 and the X-T3 cameras. Not only did I test using a native Fujifilm lens, but I also tested using a third-party lens, this Viltrox 23mm. So I put the camera in manual mode. I had 3 objects at different focal distances from the camera, and when I had the single point focus indicator on the camera right in the middle of the object I wanted to focus on, I quickly pressed the back button focus. I then turned the camera, bam, pressed it again really quickly, and did the same thing a bunch of times, both before and after the firmware update. What I found was that the camera did acquire focus faster after the firmware update, but only when I used a native Fujifilm lens. When I tried it on the Viltrox third-party lens, I saw no difference. It wasn't worse, it wasn't better, it was basically just the same. However, with the native Fujifilm lens, it was noticeably faster, and I think that this firmware update will be a welcome improvement to those of you that use back button focus type setups on Fujifilm cameras where you have your focus mode in manual. Now, there's one thing that I think confuses a lot of Fujifilm users, and that's what I call the bunch of lock stuff. Let me show you what I mean. When you press and hold down the DISP back button, and let's go and assign something to the Q button, for example, you've got a number of different types of lock settings that you can choose from. So this one right here, AE lock only, locks only the exposure. So when you assign it to a button and you go ahead and you press down on that button, you lock the exposure and it stays locked no matter where you move the camera. Obviously this works when the camera is determining the exposure. It doesn't really affect the camera if you've got everything in manual mode. So for example, if I put the entire camera in automatic ISO, automatic shutter speed, automatic aperture, right? Now if I press and hold down the button, which I'm gonna do, and I turn the camera this way, nothing happens. Look at that. It's keeping the same exposure. It has locked in the exposure. However, if I take my thumb off the button and now I rotate the camera, you see that? The next one, AF lock only, locks only autofocus and doesn't affect exposure. Obviously, this one would be better used in both S or C focus modes and not in manual focus mode. Now, AE-AF lock, you see that right there? Now that one will lock both your focus and your exposure. However, just like AF lock only, okay, it does not autofocus the camera when you go to press the button. It just locks it at whatever focus it already was at. So for example, I'm gonna half press down the shutter button, boom, just like that, okay? Now I'm gonna press the button that I assigned the AE-AF lock to, recompose the shot over to here, say, and have my focus set on this object in the background. And now, while I'm in this position, I'm gonna press and hold down the AE-AF lock button, just like that. You see, it didn't focus. Look at that, it didn't focus. It basically locks everything that was existing in the scene at the moment you press it, and it doesn't make any change to anything. Now, it's important to note that all 3 of these lock modes that I just told you about can either be set as a toggle switch or something that you have to press and hold down the entire time you want to have it activated. And the area that you find that is in the little wrench under button dial setting where it says AE-AF lock mode. Do you see that right there? And you could either set it to be activated only while you're pressing it or as a switch that you can turn on, turn off. And finally, the 4th one, and what I think is the most useful lock mode, and that's the AF on mode. Do you see that right there? And this is what I believe Fujifilm is referencing when they mentioned that they had updated One Push AF. Just keep in mind that with the AF on button, it doesn't ever act like a toggle switch. It only ever gets activated while you're pressing and holding it down. So there you have it, another round of updates. And I must say, kind of on the disappointing side. I was hoping to see a bit more coming to these older Fujifilm cameras. I saw nothing there for the X-H1, which actually surprised me, considering the X-H2S is coming out. And honestly, I really, and I am speaking to you, Fuji, okay? Just as a request, whenever you do a firmware update, on your website somewhere, can you at least be a little more detailed as to what the firmware update is doing? If it's bug fixes, what are some of the main bugs that are being fixed? If there is an improvement in autofocus, tell us a little bit more about it. It would really help. I mean, I don't know. I'm just speaking for me. It would really help me to do these training videos, but I think it would help a lot of other Fujifilm users better understand, what's been improved on their cameras. Anyhow, that'll do it for today. And I wanted to let you know that this video was originally going to come out later, as I was going to do the part 2 video of the 100K celebration. But I decided I think we needed to get down to business today. And so we will do the part 2 video most likely next week. Well, thank you so much for watching. And I really hope you found the video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I will be signing off now, but have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in a new video next week. Take care.